The story is told of a very wealthy man who became desperately ill. And as he got closer and closer to death, he summoned his closest confidants to his bedside. His doctor, his preacher, and his lawyer. The wealthy dying man said, "I know they say you can't take it with you, but who knows? Maybe the experts are mistaken. I'm going to try to take my wealth with me. So I'm going to give each one of you an envelope containing $100,000. And when I die, I want you to slip that envelope in my jacket pocket at the funeral service. Then if I need the money for the life to come, I'll be ready. Now, I'm giving these envelopes to you because you are my closest, trusted, capable friends." So he gave one envelope of $100,000 to the doctor, gave the other envelope containing $100,000 to the preacher, and gave the other envelope containing $100,000 to the lawyer. Sure enough, several weeks later, the man passed away. And there at the funeral, people saw these three fellows approaching the casket, and everybody watched as each one of them slipped an envelope into his coat pocket. Well, following the service, the three men gathered together, visiting with each other, and the doctor displayed a rather sheepish look on his face. He says, "Fellows, I have a confession to make. You know, with the cost of medical equipment today, the hospital is in need of a new CAT scan machine, and we just don't have the funds for it. So I took $20,000 out of the envelope to pay for the CAT scan machine, and I put the rest in his pocket." Well, it wasn't long after that the minister, he had a kind of a sheepish look on his face too. He said, "Fellows, I too have a confession to make. As you know, our homeless shelter at the church is overrun with people, and there's more going out than coming in. I took $50,000 out of the envelope to help cover the cost of our homeless shelter, but I put the rest in his jacket pocket." Well, the lawyer, fixing a steady gaze upon both of them, said, "I'm astonished and I'm deeply disappointed that you would treat our solemn trust so casually. He was our friend. I want you to know that I placed in his casket my personal check for the full $100,000. In all fairness, lawyers are not the only ones who deal with the sin of greed. Our text this morning will come from Proverbs chapter 15, verse 27. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 27, Solomon writes to us, "A greedy man brings trouble to his family, but he who hates bribes will live." Now this verse implies that greed for financial gain leads one to neglect godly principles and to do things which are unethical. Greed for financial gain leads people to neglect God's principles, His values, and they end up doing things that aren't exactly kosher. So if we're going to live skillfully, as the book of Proverbs advocates, we're going to have to get rid of greed in our lives. Keep in mind, we're in a series which I'm referring to as Skillful Living. We're taking a look at various lessons throughout the book of Proverbs, and one of the main themes of the book of Proverbs is wisdom, and one of the ideas behind the word wisdom is skill. God wants us to live skillfully, and if we're going to live skillfully, we're going to have to be people who free our lives of the sin of greed. Now, just as a lack of skill can affect a sports team, you have one player that's not very skillful, not very practiced up, doesn't do a very good job, he's going to affect the rest of the team, correct? He could even cause a team to lose because his lack of skill brings everyone else down. Well, in a very similar sense, Solomon is telling us here that greed, the sin of greed, can affect others around us. There is a kind of blowback from the sin of greed. You'll notice in this verse, he tells us that a greedy man brings trouble to his family. Now, he doesn't go into detail and explain how that takes place. I wish he would have, but he didn't. I'll take his word for it. But in a broad sense, anytime a person rejects godly values, which greed is one of them, it adversely affects others on the team, so to speak. And in this case, Solomon mentions a man's family. Greed has a way of hurting those around us, even those under our own household. You see, greed for financial gain gets our priorities out of whack. It gets things out of kilter. It leads to family dysfunction. For example, the greedy person puts money ahead of people. That's one of the hallmarks of this sin. It elevates money to the status of a god. It puts money ahead of people. It puts money ahead of relationships. It even puts money ahead of family relationships. It leads people to even neglect their families relationally in their frantic pursuit of wealth. Expensive gifts for the spouse or expensive gifts for the children become substitutes for the gift of themselves. And before long, values get twisted and the family starts to unravel. Relationships suffer because of greed. Another angle on this, how many families have been destroyed over the distribution of the estate? A lawyer once said, where there's a will, there's relatives. If you've ever been through anything like that, you know what I'm talking about. Along these lines, Proverbs chapter 28, verse 25 states, a greedy man stirs up dissension, but he who trusts in the Lord will prosper. Greed for financial gain can be a relationship killer in families and among people in general. Why? Because it stems from selfishness. You see, selfishness drives people apart. Selflessness brings people together. But greed is an expression of selfishness. The Hebrew word for greed is interesting here in this verse. It's defined as an uncontrolled, avaricious appetite for material things. I like that. Avaricious appetite for material things. That's what this Hebrew word refers to. It's somebody who just has this insatiable appetite for more and more and more things. The point of the verse is that we should trust in the Lord and not riches. We should hunger and thirst after Him, not the things of this world. Getting this backwards is going to lead to strife in our relationships and a whole host of other sins to boot. You know, sometimes I don't think we fully comprehend just how serious the sin of greed is. You realize God does not even want to spend eternity with people who are greedy. He doesn't even want those people in His presence. You say, John, that sounds harsh. Well, listen to what the Word of God says in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 5. Apostle Paul tells us here in the New Testament, for of this you can be sure. In other words, write this down, underline it. No immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Now, you'll notice there's some very serious implications associated with the sin of greed. It's right in the same category with sexual immorality. It's in the category of idolatry. So how could that be? Well, an idol is anything you put in place of God. And people who are riddled with greed are people who have put greed ahead of God, and it becomes their God. It becomes the focal point of their lives. That's what they tend to serve. That's why Jesus said you can't serve both God and money. You'll love one and hate the other. And notice Jesus puts money in that category of a God, a little g, of course. You see money and greed and wanting more and more and more compete with God. Because money tries to promise you the same things that God can give you. But don't lose sight of this. It is a sin. It's right in there with immorality. It is right in there with idolatry. And notice this, God is not going to spend eternity with a greedy person. I don't know about you, but that sure gets my attention. A greedy person will not inherit the kingdom of Christ and God. Wow. I'll let you know this is a serious sin. Paul also writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11, he says, but now I'm writing you that you must not associate with anyone who calls himself a brother, but is sexually immoral, or greedy, an idolater, or a slanderer, a drunkard, or a swindler. With such a man do not even eat. Now, he's not talking about people out here in the world. You'd have to leave the planet to get away from these sins and these kinds. But he's saying anybody who calls himself a brother, is sexually immoral and greedy, idolater, slanderer, drunkard. He says, don't even eat with such a man. Don't hang with him. Now, some of these I can get, but greed is right in there with all these other sins. Sometimes we kind of wink at greed like it's not that serious. We call it ambitious or being a hustler and wanting to get ahead and all that kind of stuff. But greed is very serious. Anybody that's driven by this strong desire for more and more and more, they got a serious sin problem. And it's so serious, God does not want to spend eternity with such a person. I think you would agree with me. This is definitely a sin we want to steer clear of. The Greek word here, very similar to the Hebrew word, means an eager desire to have more, as in material possessions. I'm convinced that we live in a time where we are under constant pressure, more so than ever in history, constant pressure to possess. We are bombarded with temptation today when it comes to wanting more and more and more and more. I mean, you can't even drive down the road without seeing an advertisement on a building. Maybe you can go into a city and see it on the side of buses. And everywhere you turn around, there's some kind of ad. You get on your phone, you see ads on the internet, you see ads on websites. Can't even watch a football game without being bombarded with all these ads, one after another. They're even getting where they put them on there and kind of a split screen with an ad with the game at the same time sometimes. Seems like some of the movies we watch are getting shorter and shorter. There's more and more ads. I don't like watching ads, by the way. I feel like if I'm already paying for what I'm watching, I shouldn't have to watch ads. But anyway, that's another story. We're bombarded with ads. I mean, you watch NASCARs and ads on the cars. TV, radio, newspaper, we just go on. I can't even go to my mailbox without an ad coming at me. Lots of ads coming at me. Some of them don't tempt me at all. Some of them tempt me a lot. That ad the Guitar Center keeps sending out periodically, that one gets to me. Sent me a catalog not too long back with all kind of drums and stuff in there and different colors and different brands and what all these different kind of woods will do and what the bearing edges on the drums will do and these cymbals will do this cymbal sound like. And before long I have to pinch myself and say, stop, John, you don't need any more drums. You don't need any more cymbals. Just stop thinking about it. Now, your thing's probably not drums from the Guitar Center, but it could be a guitar, or it might be a ring, or it might be a necklace, might be a gun, might be a camper. Might be a boat. Might be a rod and reel. Might be a deer hunting rifle. I mean, we can just go on and on with all this. We're all constantly tempted. And another thing is, man, if these advertisers find out what your likes are, look out. I made the mistake of subscribing to this thing called Reverb.com. And they know what kind of stuff I like. And they have a live feed for me every day. And all I have to do is click on that app and it shows me all the different symbols that are out there that I might like to have. I made that mistake. I've had to make myself quit clicking on that and quit looking at that. It's terrible. But there's other things like that. Maybe it's on eBay for you. There's all kinds of advertisements and all kinds of pressures now to possess, and we really, really need to be careful. A preacher friend of mine, Dennis Mullen, mentioned that his wife received an advertisement in the mail, kind of an unusual advertisement. It was an advertisement for a credit card. But this particular credit card was referred to as a Christian credit card. It said, Cynthia, now you can carry the Platinum MasterCard that celebrates the Christian faith. If you're like me, you didn't realize there was such thing as Christian credit cards. But Dennis wondered, well, what made the credit card Christian in nature? Does the bank practice the scriptural principle, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors? Does the card feature an extended long grace period? Instead of sending in a payment, can you just kind of write them a note that says, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have I give to thee? I bet you can't do any of those things with the Christian credit card. All joking aside, we really are living in this unprecedented time, this pressure to possess. And we need to be very careful with greed because it is serious, as I mentioned earlier. And Jesus tells us it's even sneaky. I guarantee there's some of y'all sitting out here right now that are greedy and you don't even know it. Now, those around you probably got a good idea, but you may not know it. Listen to what Jesus says in Luke chapter 12, verse 15. Watch out. In other words, beware. Keep your guard up. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. So he's letting us know it's stealthy. Some of us need to have, all of us, we need to have some guard duty going on to make sure that our lives are free from the love of money and possessions and things. We are living, as you know, in a very materialistic culture. And it's almost in vogue to be materialistic. But this goes right against what Scripture teaches. We are not supposed to be dominated by this desire for more and more and more. Again, it could be anything from clothes to jewelry to anything that brings you some kind of pleasure. It could be collecting stamps and dolls, books, whatever. We all need to watch our lives closely and make sure we're not consumed with always wanting more and more and more. I don't know if you've noticed this before in your life, but I've noticed a lot of times when I want something and I get it and I enjoy it, and then after that, it doesn't seem to bring me much joy anymore. I can remember when we first got our van, it was used, but it wasn't too used. I remember I just would get a lot of joy out of just sitting in it, smelling that leather. I was impressed with the stereo system in there. And I was just thinking the other day, now I get in this thing and I take all that for granted and don't think one thing about it. Can y'all relate to that? When you first got your car, you loved it, didn't you? It smelled good in there. It's new. You just love driving. I've even gotten in a newer car for me and just wanted to take a trip because I love riding it so much. Oh, man, this thing rides so smooth. Yeah, listen to the stereo system in here. It sounds out of this world. Hey, you can even watch TV in my van. It's awesome. But now we don't think nothing about it. Just get in there and go. No, I'm not impressed at all. And that's the way it is with material things. It may bring a little joy to you at first, but after a while, like they say, the new wears off. So keep that in mind when it comes to material things and wanting more and more and more and more. It's not really going to bring you any long-lasting fulfillment. So my question to you this morning is, what is your attitude toward money and possessions? Could greed have you? Or could greed be about to sneak up on you? There's some diagnostic questions here I came across that kind of made my ears perk up. Are you tight-fisted, miserly, and stingy? If so, you likely have a problem with greed. Do you hoard money or material possessions? If so, you likely have a problem with greed. If you get back too much money at the grocery store or restaurant or bank and you realize it, do you figure it's just their problem and keep the money? If you do, you likely have a greed problem. When you lose money, you get so upset that you can hardly think about anything else. This could also indicate that you have a greed problem. Are you willing to do things that are unethical or even illegal for money? If you do have a greed problem. Again, all of us should be very vigilant. And all of us should keep our guard up. Greed is a stealthy sin that'll have you before you know it. So with this in mind, let's turn our attention to some of the root causes of greed. I believe these root causes of greed are based on three major misconceptions. By the way, if you have your church app, these points will be on your app. One misconception is more possessions equal more joy. In other words, the more I have, the more enjoyment I will have in life. That is not true. Some of the most miserable people in the world are people that have a whole lot of money and a whole lot of stuff. Sometimes I watch these documentaries on A&E and on the PBS, and I just finished watching one on country music. I don't know if you watched that one, but I was really turned off by Johnny Cash. I used to think he was the coolest dude. Johnny Cash, Man in Black, But man, when I looked at his life, it just kind of sickened me. Just adultery and drug abuse, and dude didn't live a very happy life at all. He had a lot of money, had a lot of hits, but there ain't no real joy there. And like I say, I've seen all kinds of documentaries, and just name them. I'm going to name you some people who really made it, had a lot of money, but were miserable. Tanya Tucker, Hank Williams, Glenn Campbell, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Marilyn Monroe, on and on you can go. Sports stars, O.J. Simpson, Darryl Strawberry, Deion Sanders. Saw a documentary on him not too long ago. And before he found the Lord, he was so miserable, he was even attempted suicide. Now, from a material standpoint, these people had it all, but they weren't happy. They were miserable. Now, am I saying everybody that's wealthy and has a lot of stuff is miserable? No, I'm not saying that, but a lot of them are. Point is, wealth and material things will not bring happiness. That's not where the happiness is. In fact, if you don't have your spiritual priorities straight, it will bring you more problems and bring you more misery into your life. Also, let me add that being rich is not the same as being greedy. Just because someone has wealth, that doesn't mean they're greedy. In fact, you can be poor and be greedy. Did you know that? So greed doesn't discriminate. Anybody can be greedy, and it is a bad sin. Paul writes in 1 Timothy 6:9, people who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. Notice he said, people who want to get rich. Do you want to get rich? Boy, that hurts, doesn't it? Sometimes people ask me, John, is it wrong to play the lottery? Why are you playing it? What's your motive? People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. You say, John, you just read that. I know. Let that be the backdrop of that question I just asked you. Should people want to play the lottery? Well, why do they play it? Well, I'm going to give all the money to the church. Yeah, right. See, we've got to be careful about this wanting to be rich stuff. It can lead you to, this verse says, ruin and destruction and all kind of harmful desires. You see, greed is a sin that will take you places you do not need to go. 1 Timothy 6:10 states, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of it. Money itself is neutral, isn't it? It's the love of it that leads people into all kinds of things. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So it's possible to be in the faith and get so in love with money that it kicks God off the throne of your heart. Dollar bill gets there and it leads to all kinds of grief and all kinds of problems. It actually takes you away from God. You wander from the faith is what happens. So this is a sin that none of us are immune to, and it's very serious. We must be careful that we don't get caught up in this mindset. If I had just a little bit more, I would be happy. Stop. Don't think like that. Get out of this idea of thinking you always got to have more and more and more. It doesn't lead to happiness. In fact, it leads to the opposite. Second misconception, the more valuables I have, the more self-worth I'll have, or the more valuable I'll be. Some people fall into that. The more valuables I have, the more valuable I will be. If I have more diamonds, I'll be more valuable. If I have some more gold, I'll be more valuable. If I have more expensive clothes, I'll be more valuable. Again, that's just not scriptural at all. In fact, Jesus says a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. He said that doesn't make you more valuable. We can buy things all day long, and that doesn't increase our value. In fact, in one sense, it make you poorer. But it's not going to add to your self-worth to have more stuff. Sometimes people come from poor or impoverished backgrounds, and And they grow up thinking, when I finally get some money, they start trying to show out, and then they get such low self-esteem. They think I got to buy all this stuff and have all this stuff just so I can just feel normal people. Stop thinking like that. That's just the devil talking to you right there. If you are a Christian, you are valuable. It doesn't have anything to do with possessions. This reminds me of the guy who went out and bought himself a brand new Mercedes-Benz to boost his self-image. He's driving down the road feeling pretty good about himself, and then he loses control of the car and crashes into a tree. Standing there in a daze and feeling greatly devalued as he looks at his totaled car, someone says, "We've got to get you to the hospital. Your right arm has been severed." The man looks down and says, "Oh no, not my Rolex too." When we equate who we are with what we have, we lose our spiritual perspective. Valuing what is not really valuable and devaluing what is valuable. Again, a man or a woman's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions. Third misconception: the more things I have, the more security I'll experience. A lot of times people are on a quest for more and more money because they believe the more money they have, the more secure they'll feel. Can I see it as and Solomon even mentions how people tend to think it's like a fortress around them that's impenetrable. Can't be taken away, but money can get away from you real quick. A few years ago, I saw half my retirement go halfway gone, just like that, in the stock market. What? That's just an example to me right there. It can get away fast. All kinds of things can happen: a flood, a fire, a storm, a crash, any stock market crash. All kind of calamities can blow into your life and take your money right away. It's very foolish to find your security in money. It's been pointed out that the older we get, the more we tend to buy into this third misconception. Thomas Aquinas observed long ago that greed tends to get worse with age. It's probably because we're thinking, I'm not going to be able to work and I'm not going to be able to bring in as much money. I need to stockpile up as much as I can. Maybe some of that kind of thinking plays into it. The older we get, the more we want to hang on to worldly wealth. We need to be careful that the older we get, that we stay away from being miserly and greedy. So what's the cure for these three common misconceptions? First, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, first one is find happiness in helping other people. It's one of the best ways to keep greed at bay is to help others. Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. Generosity is at the opposite end of the spectrum from greed. Y'all probably heard me talk about this before. There's something called the law of incompatible behavior. In other words, you can't breathe and hold your breath at the same time. You can't stand and sit down at the same time. Well, you can't be generous and greedy at the same time. So when you're giving, you're not being greedy. And so we want to be people who practice generosity. And I'm not just talking about generosity at church, although that is one way to express generosity. But I'm talking about just being generous in general to people who are in need. And I've heard it, you've probably heard this before too, that the people who tip the least are Christians. You ever heard that? I don't know how they know who's a Christian and who's not. I guess by who has a suit and tie on about 12 o'clock on Sunday. I guess, I don't know. We could fake them out here, couldn't we? They don't know. We're kind of stealthy. I don't know if we're, Anyway, just being kidding about it. But really try to practice generosity. That kind of help you not to be greedy. Also, find your self-worth in a relationship with God. Kind of already touched on that. Your value is not based on how much stuff you got. Your value is because you are a child of God. If you belong to Jesus Christ, you are royalty according to Scripture. You have been adopted into God's family. I can't think of anything better than being a child of God. That ought to give you all the self-esteem you'll ever need. Get far more self-esteem out of that than a fancy watch or a ring or an expensive car. Your value comes from being a child of God through Jesus Christ. Never forget that. And lastly, find security in trusting God. God wants us to place our trust in Him, not material wealth. That's implied in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. God wants us to depend upon Him daily. That was pretty much the lesson when the children of Israel came out of Egypt, where they go out there daily and get the manna. except on Friday we got a double mount because he didn't want them gathering on the Sabbath. But the idea was daily dependence on God. And that's what we need to do. Trust God, not money. Put your faith in Him, not the quote-unquote almighty dollar. Never replace God with money. I'll end with this verse from Hebrews chapter 13, verses 5 through 6. Pretty much puts it all together here. It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Be content with what you have. Man, that'll smother greed just like that. Nips it in the bud. Be content with what you have because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we may say with confidence, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. Hi there, I'm John Wagnon, minister of New Discovery Christian Church here in Hernando, Mississippi. And I want to thank you for visiting our YouTube channel. I do hope you enjoy the sermons, and I hope the Lord builds you up through His Word as I do my best to present it to you. If you're ever in the area, feel free to drop by and check us out live and in person. Once again, thank you for checking out our YouTube channel.